Hello, everyone. This is OG. Very, very happy to have all of you today. Very exciting topic. I am with Alex Leonida. I know Alex for a long time, many, many years. You guys know that in my previous life, when I used to work for large corporation, I used to track a lot of projects. I used to do a lot of extremely big investment, and tracking cost and tracking value is a big issue. We know that some people are failing to do that. So today, this is exactly the topic that we're going to have with Alex. So Alex is the founder and CEO of Silkflow. We'll talk about that platform later. As I said, I know Alex for a very long time, many years. This platform that he has built is solving exactly that problem, the problem of tracking value creation when you have a lot of ongoing projects, technology project, right? So Alex, thanks to have you today. Maybe you can spend a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that was a great intro. Thanks, Olivia. So I've been in the automation and AI space for about 10 years or so, working with multinational companies around the world. And I think in total, I've probably delivered about £100 million worth of cost reduction or cost improvements. And that's across various different industries. And I think one of the benefits of doing that over the last 10 years is that I've been able to see where the gaps are in how companies are implementing new technologies, whether it's RPA, ERP, you name it. And the same one kind of kept coming up every single time, which is what led me to found Silkflow. But I think the key thing for today's call is just, how can companies actually realize the value from their AI investments? And that's what we'll look to speak about today.
Yes, exactly. And today we talk about the value and the return investment of AI. Again, for people that have been around for a while, we used to have those similar conversation around previous wave of technology. So this is not something new. This is something that has not been solved yet. We tend to get very excited about the technology. We tend to bleed money around technology. And then at some point, if we are not able to articulate the value, project stops. Sometimes teams are being dismantled and, bad thing happens. So in context of AI, I would say it's even more crazy because the amount of spending that we see, Gartner is projecting a huge amount of spending. And by spending, I would say all the layers from infrastructure to software to human resources, right? We see crazy numbers. And we know that a lot of that investment in context of AI is actually not correctly tracked. And we don't really see, or we are not really sure that we are going to see a return investment, right? So is that number about at least a third, potentially even more? I would say, frankly, like half of all those investments are not correctly tracked. Is that number a surprise for you?
I mean, I'm surprised it's that high after all these years doing the same thing, right? You'd think we would have learned our mistakes by now. No, so that was a good point you mentioned. Gartner predicts, I think it was AI spending to triple to about $270 billion by 2030. And of that, I think there was another study you mentioned saying that only a third of companies or CFOs are actually reliably measuring the impact of their AI investments. And I think that's partly due to the fact that they're measuring things like hours saved and activity metrics and vanity metrics without actually understanding how it maybe reduces headcount or increases output. They're not tying it back to the P&L, and I'm seeing that in a lot of my conversations over the last year or so, especially to do with AI.
And the fact that it is AI, is this creating an extra level of complexity? So, for example, speed, right? Everything is going super crazy.
Yeah.
So do we see here that it's the same problem as before, but way worse because it's actually the cycle is much faster?
So I would say, from my experience, it's the same track that we were falling in with ERP, RPA, CRMs, even the lot, right? It's just now a hell of a lot faster because of the amount of money and FOMO flowing into this technology. The tools are so much more accessible now to everyone. Whereas RPA, I think you needed a lot of stage gates. You did have some community-based versions available, but it was very slow adoption across the company. Now it's, you give everyone a Gemini license or a ChatGPT license and you just have at it. And now you've got like shadow IT cropping up at 10x the speed that we had before, just because of the accessibility. I think there was another study done where it was proved that employees were using personal AI productivity tools versus more so than company branded ones, purely because they were just so much more comfortable using it in their own time. And I think that just opens up a whole number of doors of issues that we
Yeah.
need to solve, especially around governance. The governance is scaling faster than the technology and the adoption.
Yeah. And I would say the speed at which we spend money on AI can really be crazy. I was reading that I think it's Uber that has already spent all their AI budget right now for 26. So the point here is, and unlike what we see out there, that employees at Meta or Google, they have to spend millions and billions of dollars in token, otherwise they don't do their job. The regular company, when they are spending that amount of money on token, they want to see some sort of a return. As you said, if it doesn't show in the P&L, that's some sort of a problem, right? So if we look at that, and if we look at basically this expectation or this pressure that comes from the top, right? I think we are now past this, again, as any new wave of technology, this excitement phase of this shiny new object. And now, something is changing. We start having the money people, right? The CFOs, but not just, right? Everyone who is really looking at the P&L, starting to top down, expecting some sort of a return, right? So do you see that? Do you see something evolving? Something has changed? Are we out of this, excitement bubble now?
I think it depends on which area, which industry you look at. Some are slower to adopt than others. But going back to the point around pressure from the top, I think it's purely just because a lot of the companies who spent money on AI so far, I think the patience at the board level or the C-suite level is just running out. We're moving away from purely R&D budgets and innovation budgets and pilots to, capital allocation. So if you're a CFO or CEO and you've spent 4 million last year in 2025 on AI, you want to know, you want the receipts. You want to know, okay, what was spent and what is the impact on, could be any kind of value driver, it could be revenue. What's the impact on revenue? How has the sales AI impacted our revenue? Or has it created more work for our salespeople because now they have to spend half of their week managing and correcting the prompts for this new agent, right? It's an interesting one. We definitely passed the pilot stage for a lot of the early movers, but I'm still speaking to companies that are in the middle stages of adopting workflow automation like RPA or NAN and those kind of tools as well. So it really depends on the industry. But yeah, you find finance are still way ahead of everyone else, banking and so on. They're always the first to adopt. They're like tech houses now. But, there's still a lot of opportunity in manufacturing and logistics and waste management, for example, local government, right? But again, there's also areas where regulation means that you can't adopt as fast. But still, it's definitely now around where's the proof? Where's the proof of impact?
Some activities, some processes, some jobs, some industries are more AI friendly than others. Like we used to say, more automation friendly than others. And that's a fact. That's why not everyone is moving at the same speed. And then, as you said, there's compliance, regulation, all of that. But for sure, once you are what I call this, first phase of excitement, which is typically all cool to burn money during a pilot or a POC because you are playing with it, at some point you move into the show me the return, start scaling, what is the value? And I think all of that here is basically highlighting that there's some sort of an expectation of return, but also accountability, right? You cannot just burn money for fun forever. At some point, that stuff has to be industrialized, operationalized. It has to get real, right? So to that point, when there is an investment, potentially significant, and then at some point it starts failing because people are looking at the impact and they don't see anywhere or don't really see as much impact as expected. Who is accountable here? Who is according to you the one that needs to be shot? Is it everyone? Is it the guy running the project? Is it the guy signing the check? Who is accountable according to you?
I mean, that's a hard one because I think it's one of the key points around why we're not seeing as the value that AI vendors promise, right? It's because no one really owns the outcome. You've got some poor BA who wrote the business case, He's probably moved on to another project or another company by now. Most of the stuff is in a task management tool or like Jira or Azure DevOps. The delivery team was measured on things like story points. They've delivered, that ticket is now closed, and they're not really judged on what happens 6 months later until the CFO starts calling and is asking, hang on, why are we spending 4 million on AI? And this team's costing us 500,000 a year. What have you done? And most of the time they just come back with, we automated 1,000 quotes or something. Okay, but what does that mean? Oh, it's a time saving of 3,000 hours a year. Okay, but how does that impact the OPEX, CAPEX, all that kind of stuff? What are the figures behind that? And it's funny because it's part of, I think, PMBOK, right? So the project management framework. But I think it's only like even this year, I think they made it as part of closing. Value management is now an official term, because we're realizing that a lot of the times these projects, with the technologies we have now to track them, well, as soon as they're closed, people treat that as, it's finished. And it's a massive gap. I honestly don't think anyone's really accountable at the moment. And I mean, that's a problem we're looking to solve.
So if we look at, let's say, one level below, which is how we measure the impact, and typically the way we sell a technology project nowadays, at least the way we should be selling it, and many companies are doing that, they build a business case. It's a very exciting business case. It's sometimes a very optimistic business case. And then some sort of alignment with the vendor or the partner that has some sort of very nice dashboard that shows all kinds of KPIs. And, all of that is looking good, and the project is running, and the KPIs are all green. And somehow, somewhere, although this is happening and this is supposedly measuring the ROI, when you jump from that framework and you go into the P&L and you talk to the CFO, they have a totally different view. All the KPIs are green in the project, but the P&L doesn't see, any dollar impacting top or bottom line. How you explain that?
Oh, that's a good one. So a lot of times, it depends on where you're coming from, but a lot of times companies are using vendor dashboards. So, like I think Microsoft has, the Copilot agent dashboards. You've got many others in the RPA space, and all kinds of technology has activity tracking. The problem behind that is they measure adoption, and the majority of the times, that's when it comes to renewal time, you can see how amazing and how much usage your company is getting out of it. And it's also to kind of like hide the fact that they don't want to talk about metrics. Not to dig at Microsoft. I love Microsoft, but I think I was speaking to the sales team for Copilot last year, and it is a challenge to try to kind of, you build a business case, but then you have to try and justify it afterwards when it comes to renewal of all of those thousands of licenses. It's a very tricky one, because whereas finance does measure outcomes like cost cuts, revenue gained, they're not in the room when those conversations are happening. It's there's definitely a bit of a mismatch between what the delivery teams and the transformation teams are doing versus what the CFO wants to see, at least this year when pilots are finishing up and now we're getting into the proper scaling stage. It's because the business case gets signed off, but it goes back to that ownership piece. No one's owning the outcome. 6 months down the line, who's in charge of that? Is it the business unit, or is it the business lead who asked for this AI solution, or is it the development team who built it?
Yeah. So when we look at, I think we have some numbers here. IBM is basically saying that the amount of organization that are achieving proper return on investment, bottom line return on investment, is roughly only 5% of the organization doing AI, 5%. Which is, we used to say, 80% of the automation projects are failing. Yeah, we talk about 95%. Okay, that's bottom line only. It's true, for people listening, that there's a lot of value, sitting at the top line of the P&L, actually a lot with AI. But if we look at the bottom line and we see only 5% achieving proper ROI, and let's say we trust that number. So this problem here, if we say, is it a tooling tracking problem? Is it an accountability problem? Is it how we incentivize people to track the problem? It's really difficult here to understand, exactly what you said, which is, where is the issue coming from? And for a fact, based on what I just said, it is pretty much happening everywhere. Those that are able to have their stuff together and track it properly, only top 5, top 10% of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes back to governance. Someone's delivering the project, someone should be in charge of the outcomes. Who that person is, it could be, it depends on the company and how you want to run things. I think with tools like workflow automation and typical process automation, it was always the business lead or the business manager who was in charge of owning that. But I think companies at the moment are too busy trying to deliver and actually, implement the technology with all the bells and whistles that they're not really focused on what happens 6 months down the line. And it's a big problem. It comes down to a mixture of those you mentioned. It is adoption, it is ownership, it is tracking, governance, and so on. But these are the kind of things that the board and C-suite need to start thinking about whenever you have an AI project. Not just AI, but any technical project, right? Transformation project. Sure, you have a tech lead, you have maybe a transformation lead, and so on and so forth. But who owns that outcome? What was the initial value of that process or improvement? What was the baseline? What's the target you're looking to achieve with this new technology? Who owns that target, and who's in charge of tracking that once that ticket is moved to closed in DevOps, for example? Those are the questions that we need to start having. Talks that we need to start having.
No, I think this is really the core here, right? Is if we look at, so some companies are able to track, so they are doing the right thing. So what good looks like, meaning what it is that those companies are doing that others are not doing. And, we are here all talking about this. I think the keyword here is having the discipline to properly track so that you can really see if you are able to achieve value, if you are able to achieve a positive return on your investment, right? So it's not just technology, it's not just people, it's not just process, it's not just, the vendor, it's not just the operating model. It's, and again, we keep hearing about this notion or this idea or this overall focus of building what people call sometimes a value realization office. So a place that is going to be dedicated at tracking, having the discipline of tracking correctly, the value that you realize was around all that money that you spend around technology, right? So is this becoming a function that company needs to have? Is that a buzzword? Do we need, some sort of a layer, a platform to support that? What is your view there?
There's a number of questions in one. Yeah, so I'd say the best. So those 5% that IBM mentioned that are actually tracking the ROI. What they're getting right is that they're treating this process more like, they're treating AI more like a capital investment and not a technology project. And with any investment, right, you start off by building a financially modeled business case before anything is approved, right? So you have to manage that intake. Have we prioritized the best opportunity? What is the forecasted benefits? What is the CapEx? What is the OpEx for this opportunity? And when do we expect to meet our target? Is it 4 years to ROI or is it 8 months? And then once all that's done, it then comes down to really just adding governance checkpoints before you start scaling. And then a regular post-live audit, monthly ideally. You don't have to do that daily, but every month at least check whether this particular closed off project, the performance of it is delivering versus the original forecast. It's not massively complicated. It goes back down to basics, right? Before, target, and actual. And it's just a discipline that most companies aren't really looking into at the moment because, again, the technology is there's a lot of FOMO around it, a lot of hype around it, and people are forgetting the governance basics. Going back to, I think you mentioned something about value realization offices. I would say it's real. I've not heard in my conversations anyone really mention that they're building one. I would love that to happen, because it's filling a gap that I feel should have existed from day one, not just now, but day one of the very first transformation that ever happened, right? The CFO's office governs capital. AI spend is capital, and eventually that function catches up. But we need CFO offices to really look into this and start owning that piece. I mean, are you seeing VROs, or are you seeing these value realization offices in your field, in your
I mean, the question here is, that function, we could almost, based on what you said, right, already assume that it's more like a financial led type of initiative than a technology led initiative. It's almost as if this value realization needs to be owned by finance, not by the CFO, not the CIO, right? Don't let the CIO own this stuff, right? This is no, this
No,
has
it's a conflict of
this
interest, right?
yeah, and
Yeah, yeah.
you need to have the financial discipline to track it properly. So it's probably
Yes.
again, and if this is going to happen, and most likely this will happen in large company. Now, the underlying question is, if you are a smaller company, you are kind of a mid-market company, and you don't have all
Mm.
those people. There's probably like a minimum size, minimum governance that is needed. You cannot have a full-blown, again, office tracking everything, whatever you call it. So what is your view there? And then again, connecting the dot with what you've built, right? Is there a way to enable those organizations to make their life easier so they can track correctly from beginning, from ideation to realization, like they can track everything, the value created by those technology projects, right?
Yeah, I mean, so it's not, governance isn't just an enterprise thing, right? My advice for anyone getting started or anyone that's looking to get a hold of this, I think a spreadsheet is fine for the first few opportunities, but just get the basics. What is the metric or KPI you're looking to improve with this new technology? Is it sales volume? Is it conversion improvement? Or is it cost reduction? Is it a compliance risk type value? What are you looking to, what metric are you looking to move that to? Just, what kind of stage gates are you putting each of these projects through? And how often are you going to track that this metric improved, right? What kind of check-ins are you going to have? And that's all you really need at the early stage. Obviously, once you get a little bit more, once you're looking to scale this up past the first few projects, give me a shout. But the ideal scenario is you have a kind of engine, like an innovation engine or value management engine, right? Intake, business case, does it make sense, yes or no? Sometimes that's enough to filter out the majority of poor AI use cases, right? And then how are you going to track that going forward? And who's going to track it? I think once
Yeah.
you've got that in place, you don't have to be an enterprise to make that work.
Yeah. So if we look at this, right, and we look at the life cycle of creating value with technology, and we basically say we have a discovery phase, we have a implementation governance phase, and then we basically realize the benefit of that effort, right? So this is how we structure it, and your platform Silkflow is designed to support the full life cycle, and you basically have developed that platform to fix that problem that we are describing here, which is no one has the discipline and no one is tracking properly from the beginning to the end. So the question I have before we go into the details of your platform, but where do you see company mostly failing? Is it from the beginning, from the discovery, the prioritization, the business casing? Is it during the implementation, they go all over the place, or closing? Where do they fail most of the time?
I would say the beginning and end. The middle is fine. The technology is fine. The delivery is fine. The majority of AI teams are fantastic at delivery. They're very good at doing what they say they're going to do. It's just a lot of the times I see poor, in the case of AI, poor use cases, and we see this from our data at Silkflow, poor use cases slipping in because some stakeholder somewhere has forced it via some kind of internal politics or whichever. And then it ends up going live, and then the value just isn't there. And they're the same ones shouting, why aren't we getting the benefit we expected, and so on. And it's because it wasn't vetted properly. So just the prioritization, the initial stage, if you can fix that piece, you're in a good place. And then again, like you said, 95% of company, or like IBM found, 95% of companies aren't actually tracking the ROI. So when you get the first bit done, then the next part is literally just, how are we tracking this going forward? And that's an easier one to solve. I mean, well, it's an easy one to get started with. It's a complex one when you start looking into all the various use cases of AI. But yeah. So beginning and end, prioritization and value realization.
Yes.
Tracking those two.
And I would say extract a concept here, which is because AI is almost an operation. I'm not even sure there's a beginning and an end. Altogether, when you adopt AI, it's almost like an ongoing process that you got to track that forever. Let's take a practical. Yeah. So let's take a practical case, right? A place where I'm sure people will want to know how wonderful the platform is and what it does and all the features and the UI, everything. But practically, when that platform gets deployed, at a client. Let's take Aviva, right? So we have this Aviva case, right? So can you talk about that? What happened there? What did you do? I see, lots of money being identified as, being saved or properly tracked. So this is a good news story. So talk about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's kind of also talks about how the platform works, right? So the way Silkflow works is it's kind of it helps you support the intake, so it helps prioritize the use cases for a new technology rollout. Helps you build the business case for finance to get the budget and go ahead, and then it connects to all of your solutions to help you track regularly after go live the value that these are bringing. It helps you track, it helps you see which ones are working and what's not working. So with the Aviva use case, fantastic team, they were claims innovation, they had their entire AI and automation pipeline was living in a mixture of Miro boards with post-it notes and spreadsheets. And so the manager was looking at me saying, Alex, I can't do anything with this information. There's no, this is going to take me ages, months to try to pinpoint or find all the people, get all the data in and so on and so forth, and try to work out which we should go for. Because they didn't have an engine to do this before. Now, yeah, you could try to. I've seen some companies try a mix of different things with like SharePoint forms and so on and so forth. But with the Aviva use case, within a day or two, all of their ideas were now fully fledged within Silkflow. The initial business cases were fleshed out to the point where they had, I think, out of 100 and I think they discovered like 112 opportunities. Where they also had their employees log into the platform and start doing some extra discovery work for them. What pain points they were having, all of that was collated by our platform. We have an AI intake which kind of cleans up all of those projects into a nice project charter. So it's easy for the business analysts to understand what the outcomes were from these notes from workshops and meetings and so on. And all of that was in a nice portfolio for them to review. In about 2 weeks' time, after a number of different one-on-ones with the teams and the different business units and such, I think they were able to build a good 60 to 70 business cases for AI, which amounted to about £12 million in pipeline for them to work on for the rest of the year. And that was all done within 3 weeks. And it was 90 times cheaper than them using a single contract BA, for example, from a consultancy that they were using. So a massive use case. And that's really just because, one, they qualified all the use cases, two, built a business case for each one, and then now they're tracking the actual value that those are bringing now that they've been deployed. So yeah.
And the tool brings the framework and the discipline to keep the tracking, right? So my personal experience, what you're describing here, a long time ago in previous life, when I used to work for a very large company, and I was the boss of automation. I had exactly that problem. I had thousands of ID to prioritize and manage in the pipeline. I had hundreds of projects running around the world, and it was a nightmare to do the prioritization, to do the business case, and to do the tracking of the project, because some of them, frankly, we had to kill because they were not delivering. Some of them we wanted to accelerate. So we had to build our own stuff. What you are describing here, if it would have been available like 5-6 years ago, I would have been the first customer like straight away, because it was a nightmare for us to create that. And if I can get an off-the-shelf platform that will help me track this, and I can put everyone on it, and it forces a framework, a governance, a discipline. So I know exactly, what to kill, what to keep, what to boost, what to slow down, so that ultimately, when I have a conversation, if I am a technology leader, when I have a conversation with a CFO, I can look smart because I can really show, what's happening. And if I can push it and connect the dot all the way to the P&L, then I'm the king because I'm doing my job.
You look amazing, right? Your team looks amazing.
Yeah, I'm not only deploying technology and making a difference at the technology level, I'm also making a difference at the P&L level.
Yeah. And I think that's important for 2026 because outcomes now, I think a lot of even consultancies are now transferring or changing or transitioning to an outcome-based model, because a lot of clients are desperate to understand or have some certainty on the value they're getting from these really costly, lengthy engagements. And I think that's where, from day one.
I think a lot of consulting, a lot of software business are moving to outcome-based model. So I'm very glad, I was personally very vocal about outcome-based model like a couple of years ago. And I see that even, big firms are using that. I love it because it really makes sense. If you're a customer, you want to buy value, you want to buy outcome, you want to buy results. You don't want to buy, anything else. So I'm very glad this is happening. And to your point, if this is happening, and if I am selling it, I am a consulting firm, I am a software, I want to make sure that as a client, I want to make sure that I'm able to track whatever I'm buying, right? So tracking the impact, tracking the outcome, and having a platform like yours that help that is absolutely critical. I agree.
Yeah, I'd say exactly. So for the consultancy side, exactly, software side, exactly, but also, for internal transformation teams, right? Tools like Jira and so on and so forth, and Azure DevOps are fantastic for tracking work and marking them as done, right? Task tracking is great. But for ROI, done is day one of that project, of that new AI model, of that new AI solution. So we hold that kind of thread from day one, from the day one business case all the way to like 3 years out, so that you can see 3 years from now how this solution has affected the company and whether it's, like you said, worth keeping, worth investing more in, or maybe you need to terminate it.
Yeah. So I think, again, for people listening, Silkflow, that's the name of the platform. I think this is, you should check that. You should look at how you are tracking value today inside your company, and you should consider potentially reaching out to Alex. I think for me, this is a no-brainer that you need that. As you said, if you are really small, you can survive with a spreadsheet, but as soon as you start scaling a little bit, and many company will go in that direction, many company are going in that direction, you need to have a bit of a framework, right? So again, thanks for your time, Alex, today. This was a great conversation. Return investment is a big deal for me. Outcome is a big deal for me. That's why we always stay in touch. I'm very glad that we talk about your platform, and for the people here, again, don't be shy, reach out to Alex. I think this is something that is definitely needed. You want to say something, maybe as a closing comment?
Just a couple things. Like, so vendors measure adoption, finance measures outcomes, and no one's really connecting the two. And that gap is where we're calling it the value gap. So Silkflow is that connection between the two. If you're looking to just get some advice and you're getting started with AI and you want to have a quick chat, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Feel free. But also, if you are scaling up AI adoption this year and you're looking to understand the value and track the impact, reach out to us on silkflow.com, and we can have a chat about where you are and how we can help on the value management side.
Cool. Thanks, Alex. Thanks to Silkflow, which is, by the way, OG approved. So I had to say that. So thanks, everyone, for listening, and we talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.